I would like to reconvene the June 24 meeting of the Newport Beach City Council and ask for a roll call, please.
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Mr. City Attorney, do we have a closed session report?
Thank you, Mayor Hill. There is no closed session report this evening.
All right. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilwoman Daigle and followed by the invocation by Councilmember Curry.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in an attitude of prayer. Our Father in God, we, your children, gathered tonight to ask your blessings upon our community, to ask for wisdom in the decisions that we make, to ask for compassion as we look to the needs of all of our citizens, that we would always keep this a great shining city by the sea, working to be honorable, to be upright, and to be the kind of place that you would have us to be. In your name we pray. Amen.
I believe that we have a presentation this evening and on the history of John Wayne Settlement Agreement, and would ask our city attorney to lead off in that presentation.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hill. As the City Council is aware, on May 23rd, the county released the draft environmental impact report for the proposed extension of the John Wayne Settlement Agreement amendment. And currently, the county is in the process of receiving comments on the draft environmental EIR, and they'll continue to receive those comments up until July 8th, 2014 at 5 p.m. And given where we're kind of at in the process, thought it'd be a good time to bring this back to you to kind of give you a history of the settlement agreement and put it in some perspective. So in regards to the history of the settlement agreement, it really began back in 1985 when the original settlement agreement, which arose out of litigation involving the city, the county of Orange, Stop Polluting Our Newport, and Airport Working Group over the 1985 master plan and the accompanying environmental impact report for that plan. And to resolve that litigation, the parties entered into a settlement agreement whereby the federal court retained jurisdiction over the litigation to enforce the terms of it. The term of the original settlement required the Board of Supervisors to modify resolutions approving the master plan and to reduce the size of the terminal to 271,000 square feet and cap the parking at 8,400 parking places. In addition, the settlement agreement created 3 classes of commercial aircraft. It had a Class A, a Class AA, as well as a Class E. And that was based on noise generated by the aircraft at the departure noise monitoring stations. The settlement agreement originally limited the number of average daily departures per year to 73, limited the number of passengers deplaning and enplaning to 8.4 million annual passengers. And it also required the county to maintain the curfew that was in effect and enforce the general aviation noise ordinance. So after 1985, the settlement agreement went through a number of amendments from 1985 to 2002. And those were based on, there was a new FAA advisory circular that established specific criteria for close-in and distant noise abatement departure procedures. There were also changes in the location and or type of equipment used to monitor noise levels. The air cargo carriers requested access, which resulted in an amendment to the agreement. And then as a result of 9/11, there were changes in the passenger facility and baggage security requirements, which all led to some fairly minor amendments of the settlement agreement. During that time period, there was adoption of a law in 1990 when Congress adopted the Airport Noise and Capacity Act, which really in relevant part requires the FAA to review and approve any proposed noise or access restrictions on any Stage 3 aircraft. And it can be a little bit difficult to understand the FAA, how they break up into different stages of the aircraft, but basically a Stage 3 aircraft are your 737s, your 757, 767, your Airbus 320. And what all this means is that when ANCA was adopted, it's virtually impossible for a local entity to enact new Stage 3 restrictions. But fortunately, the city and the county were able to lobby Congress to get an exception included in the law that allowed for the 1985 settlement agreement, any amendments to the 1985 settlement agreement that do not reduce or limit aircraft operations or affect aircraft safety, as well as the county noise curfew ordinance to be exempt from that new law. So currently, our settlement agreement, any amendments thereto, as well as the curfew ordinance, all three of those are exempt from ANCA as long as we don't reduce or limit aircraft operations or affect aircraft safety. And we don't have to go to the FAA for review and approval as you would if you didn't have the settlement agreement. The most major amendment that's happened to the settlement agreement is a 2003 amendment. And how this came about is back in 2000, the City Council asked the board to consider whether or not it would extend the settlement agreement, which was set to expire at the end of 2005. And over the next couple years, the parties to the settlement agreement got together and worked on it to see what the appropriate terms and conditions would be for an extension. And that process culminated in the 2003 amendments to the settlement agreement. And pursuant to the 2003 amendments that were all agreed to by the parties and blessed by the court, it eliminated the AA class of aircraft, so then you were just left with Class A and Class E aircraft. It increased the maximum number of noise-regulated air carriers from 73 to 85 average daily departures. The number of air cargo trips was increased from 2 to 4. And finally, it increased the number of deplaning and enplaning passengers over the term of the agreement to 10.8 million annual passengers. And that's all through December 31st, 2015, when the agreement's set to expire. In addition, the 2003 amendments, the curfew remained unchanged. Now, that actually goes out to 2020. One other point in the 2003 amendments increased the number of passenger loading bridges from 14 to 20, and the cap on public parking spaces as well as the restriction on the size of the terminal were both eliminated with the 2003 amendments. So as I mentioned, the current settlement agreement, except for the curfew, is set to expire on December 31st, 2015. The curfew, like I said, goes through 2020. Because it was expiring in 2012, the city, county, and AWG and SPAWN got together and asked the county whether or not it would be interested in extending the settlement agreement again like it did back in 2003. And the county has worked with the city to do that. And so in April 2013, we entered into an MOU which defined the proposed project to be studied for the amendment, as well as the alternatives that would be studied under CEQA. And the city's preferred project extends the noise-based curfew through 2035. And what that means is that there'd be no commercial departures from 7 a.m. Before 7 a.m. Monday through Saturday, no commercial departures before 8 a.m. on Sunday, and no arrivals on any day of the week after 11 p.m. So it takes the current restrictions under the curfew and basically extends those out through 2035. It also maintains the 10.8 million MAP, or million annual passengers that can come through JWA through 2020. So that stays constant for another 5 years beyond the proposed expiration date of the current agreement. It adds a million annual passengers to 11.8 through 2025. And then depending on whether or not the airport serves more than 11.2 million annual passengers in the years between 2021 2025, would result on whether you get 12.2 or 12.5 MAP through 2030. The next change is also maintenance of on the cap of average daily departures for Class A flights, which are your louder flights at 85 and 4 cargo flights through 2020, and increasing it to 95 flights and 4 cargo flights through 2030. And finally, the proposed project eliminates the cap on the loading bridges after 2020. So prior to the county considering a proposed amendment to the settlement agreement, the county has to go through an environmental process, and as the lead agency, it conducts analysis regarding the proposed project to determine its effect on the environment. And in essence, what they do is they prepare an environmental impact report, which is really an informational document that gives the public detailed information about the likely effect of the proposed project on the environment, as well as how those impacts may be mitigated or minimized. And then under CEQA, the county is also obligated to analyze a reasonable range of alternatives to the proposed project. And when you're looking at alternatives, the alternatives must attain the basic objective of the project in a feasible manner, while also avoiding or substantially lessening any of the significant effects of the project. So that's what they're kind of looking at when it comes to the alternatives. One other alternative that they have to consider is a no project alternative, which basically takes a look at the existing conditions as well as what would be reasonably expected to occur in the foreseeable future if the project is not approved. So these come from the MOU as far as the alternatives that were elected to be studied. The first alternative, A, was based on the FAA's Terminal Area Forecast Detail Report from January 2013. Alternative B was based on input from JWA's commercial carriers about where they thought things were going as far as the number of passengers to be served at JWA. Alternative C was based on the physical capacity of JWA's airfield. And then, as we discussed, the no project alternative, it assumes operations under the current settlement agreement would remain unchanged. However, as soon as the settlement agreement expires, then the County Board of Supervisors could modify any of the restrictions that are set forth, and we'll get to those, I think, in 2 slides. So finally, the last alternative that was considered is the 2025 Horizon Year alternative. That alternative wasn't in the MOU as one to be considered. It basically takes your proposed project and analyzes the first 2 phases, basically ending the agreement at 2025 rather than 2030. Oh, and here's the alternatives as far as the specifics about what they covered. Alternative A, B, and C are pretty self-explanatory. For alternative A, the terms through 2030, curfew through 2035, and then it increases the million annual passengers, stays 10.8 through 2020, 11.4 through 2025, and 12.8 through 2030. And then as far as the average daily departures, you'd see an increase from the current 85 to 170 through 107, through 2020, 120 through 2025, and 135 through 2030. And under alternative B, which was based on the forecast from the airline industry, you have the same term, same curfew, same million annual passenger limits through 2020, but then you see a significant increase of 13 million annual passengers in 2025, 15 million annual passengers in 2026 through 2030, as well as some fairly significant ADDs, average daily departures. It'd be 100 through 2020, 110 through 2025, and 115 through 2030. And alternative C is basically the maximum capacity of the airport according to JWA. So it had the curfew ending in 2020. They think that they have the physical capacity to handle 16.9 million annual passengers there as well as 228 Class A average daily departures. And then the other two that are up there, the no project alternative and the 2025 horizon year, as I mentioned, the no project alternative assumed the settlement agreement would expire December 31st, 2015, and the curfew on December 31st, 2020. So while it shows a 10.8 million MAP, or million annual passengers, and 85 Class A average daily departures, as I mentioned, the Board of Supervisors could change the restriction on the million annual passengers and the 85 Class A DDs after the agreement expired. There'd be no restriction. There would no longer be a grandfather provision under ANCA, so we would basically lose any ability to regulate locally. And finally, as I mentioned, the 2025 scenario is exactly the same as the proposed project. It just has the curfew, or I'm sorry, it has the project ending in 2025 as opposed to 2030. And with that, I'll turn this over to Dave.
So Aaron talked about the proposed project. This is the one that the city and its negotiators preferred and your council has preferred. The Board of Supervisors will be asked to consider adopting that project. Again, that's our preference, but they could also adopt an alternative, none of which are our preference. And why do we like it? It's because it protects the curfew. It does comply with ANCA in our belief, with some small growth there. And it gives a full 15 years of certainty, and that's important in light of the difficulty in these negotiations, that you could indeed stop after 10 years, but before we knew it, we'd be back at the negotiating table probably with completely different people. So that additional 5 years, as I've said, it kind of kicks it to the next generation. And there's a lot of institutional knowledge from the airport director to people like Gene Watt with Spawn and all the hard work that's gone into this, which is why the 15-year scenario to us is the better one. There are pitfalls, as Aaron mentioned, to the no project alternative. It does end the settlement agreement. So I didn't want the public at home to be fooled at all by that the restrictions are off if the no project alternative is adopted. Again, except for the board would have to adopt the changes, but there'd be nothing controlling that. So for more information, folks can still voice their opinion on the draft environmental impact report through July 8th. There's the email to do that. We put all this information up on the Aviation Committee website, and you could find that through our main website, and you could certainly ask me or Aaron if anyone had any questions at all about this process. So with that, we thank you for your patience, and hopefully this has been helpful to you and the folks at home.
All right, thank you. Comments from the council? All right, then we'll go to notice of the public.
The city provides a yellow sign-in card to assist in the preparation of the minutes. The completion of the card is not required in order to address the city council. If the optional sign-in card has been completed, it should be placed in the box provided at the podium. The City Council of Newport Beach welcomes and encourages community participation. Public comments are generally limited to 3 minutes per person to allow everyone to speak. Written comments are encouraged as well. The City Council has the discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items. As a courtesy, please turn cell phones off or set them in the silent mode. Now is the time for City Council announcements or matters which council members would like placed on a future agenda.
Councilwoman Daigle.
Thank you. I didn't move fast enough on the airport one, but I did want to thank our community groups, Airport Working Group and Spawn and Airfare, for their dedication and their commitment and their tremendous knowledge of this subject. Our staff, our city manager and city attorney for providing a planning framework that we could all work within and progress and come to some conclusions. So I thought that the process included people. Some of the prior negotiations weren't as inclusive of the groups. So I thought that went well. And I'm looking forward to the county approving our preferred project, and most of all, the certainty that it will bring our community, the protection that it will bring our community, so that our quality of life at least won't be threatened by the airport expanding beyond the numbers that we've agreed to. So thank you.
Councilman Henn.
Just a quick note, I enjoyed attending the Employee Service Awards on June the 12th out here at the Civic Green. We had employees that were celebrating their as many as 40 anniversaries here at the city. That's a tremendous achievement. And just to note that we really have a great city staff here, and I really appreciate all the support that I've enjoyed from them over the years.
Councilman Curry.
Just to note that Sunday we kicked off the first concert on the green for the season out here on the Civic Green, and a great crowd was here to enjoy some excellent music in just a delightful setting, and we're really using the Civic Center the way it was designed to be used. I also want to comment on the airport agreement. The 15-year extension of the curfews and the takeoff procedures is a huge accomplishment for our city and for the protection of our quality of life. And I want to commend staff and our attorneys who worked so hard to do that, along with our community groups who have been active partners in all of that. Three projects that I've been in discussions with people in the Newport coast that don't necessarily need to come back to council, but we ought to. I would like us to do some preliminary work on. Would be uplighting of the monument sign entering into Newport coast. Review the status of potential utility undergrounding along San Joaquin Hills going up to Newport Coast Drive, and a review of some of the drainage maintenance issues, particularly as they relate at Newport Coast Drive there at the park and San Joaquin Hills, where we may have some issues because of dry weather and accumulated debris, et cetera, to come back. Thank you.
Councilwoman Gardner.
I'd have two things that I would ask the city manager to put on the agenda to see if they would be considered for a formal agenda. The first is we've had a lot of interest in having the Cronenmar footbridge declared a historical entity. So see if the council would be interested in pursuing that. And secondly, I was in a meeting in our city hall the other day looking out in the Civic Green, and I saw someone out there, and to my shock there was all this smoke, and I realized it was an e-cigarette. And I don't know, it was just disconcerting to me. So I'd like us to consider extending our cigarette ban in public places to e-cigarettes. Thank you.
Councilman Petros.
Just an acknowledgement that the replanting and renovation of Cliff Drive Park is in full swing. I want to thank the Newport Heights community and the residents who were instrumental in putting that plan together. If you haven't yet seen that, please drive by. It will be absolutely wonderful when it is fully planted and when the growth does start. Remarkable effort. So on behalf of the Heights, thank you.
Councilman Selledge.
Yes, thank you. I participated last week in a visit by the Army Corps of Engineers with our staff, General Clarence Turner, who's head of the region, which includes the Los Angeles District, was here, along with some of his staff, and we met up in Castaways Park to review some of the projects that occurred in the Upper Bay and the Lower Bay, and I think the Corps was quite pleased with the results of the work that we've done, and we certainly have a terrific working relationship, it appears, with both the civilian staff as well as the military staff at the Corps of Engineers. And I'll just add one other thing that we learned at that meeting, and that is that if we want to move the project line, we don't have to go through Congress. It's a decision that can be done either at the Corps office if they determine it's a minor decision, or it may have to go to Washington if they consider it a major decision, but it's a 6-month to a year process based on their estimates. So that was some good news from that visit. And then on the 14th, I participated in handing out some awards at the Arts Commission art exhibit, which was held in our community room. And they used the community room just exactly as we had envisioned. They opened the doors up, and the artwork was both inside and outside. Had a terrific crowd. I think it was the largest crowd they've ever had for the annual art exhibit. I think it was the 50th year of doing it also. And it was just a terrific, well-attended event. I think they had 272 art entries with over 150 artists, so it was really a terrific event. And then last...
Before you leave that, just they wanted also to give special thanks to 24 Carats for all their support.
Yes, they did. They provided some excellent food there. And then lastly, the Local Coastal Plan Committee will be meeting tomorrow at 12:30 to 2:30 in the Newport Coast Room in the City Hall building.
I would like to acknowledge that the Oasis Senior Center is hosting a Health and Fit After 50 event on Saturday, June 28th from 9 till noon. The program will include motivational speakers covering health and fitness topics related to those 50 and over, a vendor fair with giveaways, a chance to tour Oasis Fitness Center and meet the trainers, and a complimentary continental breakfast. The event is free, and advance registration is requested by calling 949-718-1818. That's 949-718-1818. I, too, would like to thank all the individuals that participated in the work that's been done to date in extending the settlement agreement to reaching an MOU with the county, airfare, SPON, the airport working group, coming together and working on, in my opinion, which I think is shared by most, the most important thing that we have done as a community to remove the largest threat to our quality of life and property values in Newport Beach, and that is extending that settlement agreement, keeping the curfew in place, and controlling growth to the extent that we reach that incredibly difficult balance of not restricting airfare, air traffic, because if we do, we could lose our grandfathering strength that we have of having the controls that we have. So congratulations to everyone involved, and looking forward to completing the EIR process and moving into a final settlement. So with that, we'll move on to public comments on the consent calendar.
This is a time in which council members may pull items from the consent calendar, items 1 through 12, for discussion. Public comments are invited on consent calendar. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record. If any item is removed from the consent calendar by a council member, members of the public are invited to speak on each item for up to 3 minutes per item. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered to be routine and will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. Council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the City Council votes on the motion, unless members of the City Council request specific items to be discussed and are removed from the consent calendar for separate action.
Councilwoman Gardner, do you have any items to remove?
I have none, but I will recuse myself from item number 3 because the paving comes within 500 feet of my home.
Councilman Petros.
I have none.
Councilman Selage.
I have none to pull, but I'm going to recuse myself on item number 3 reluctantly, since the city attorney told me that it's within 500 feet of my house, and I don't see how that can be a conflict of interest, but I'll accede to his advice on that, and also congratulate staff on a good job on redoing the landscaping on Harbor Island Drive and those islands. I think that's came out really good.
You done editorializing?
You want more?
No. Councilwoman Daigle.
I have no items to pull, though I'll recuse myself from number 12, the AT&T item, although I primarily work for the other brand, Verizon Wireless. Excellent brand.
You can tell who's in control around here. Councilman Henn.
No editorial comments from me.
Thank you. Councilman Curry.
Nothing to pull. I'm going to recuse myself on item 12 too because I own stock in AT&T.
Does Councilwoman Daigle know that? I have nothing to
Just
pull.
If you, I don't know if I do or not. So I'll recuse myself from number 12 because I might have stock. I don't know. I don't follow my portfolio that closely. So I don't want to take any chances.
All right. Do we have any public comments on any of the items on the consent calendar? Anyone like to speak on an item on the consent calendar? Now would be the time to do that. Sure, please.
Hello, council members. My name is David Casada. I'm a captain in the harbor. I've been a captain for 22 years in Newport. Born and raised here. I'm 40 years old now. And I've driven for every company in Newport. I've driven all the large commercial boats and most of the yachts. In addition, I'm an avid sailboat racer and have raced professionally, raced with Gary Hill and Marshall Duffield on the boat Halua, a Santa Cruz 70. I'm a little late to apply for the Harbor Commission, but I'm here to ask that you consider me. I think that I definitely have more qualifications than all the applicants. So if you would, please consider me for a Harbor Commission spot. That would be awesome.
All right, could you give us your name again?
Yeah, David Quesada.
Spell your last name.
Uesada.
Okay. That is not an item on the consent calendar. That will be
Okay.
taken up as a separate item yet this afternoon.
Okay,
All right. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Anybody else would like to speak on any items on the consent calendar? Seeing no one, we will then I will accept a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval of the consent calendar items number 1 through 12, noting a recusal by Councilwoman Gardner on items 3 and 12, by Councilmember Selich on item 3, by Councilmember Curry on item 12, and Councilwoman Daigle on item number 12 also.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. We have a motion. Please vote.
The motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
Thank you. We will now go to public comments on non-agenda items.
Public comments are invited on non-agenda items generally considered to be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record.
Do we have anyone from the public that would like to make comments on non-agenda items?
Sure, why not? Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I am Stephen Rosansky, President and CEO of the Newport Beach Chamber of Commerce. Joining me tonight are former council member and president of SPAWN, Gene Watt, and representing the Orange County Coastkeepers, Ray Heimstra. Did I pronounce that right? Heimstra. We're here tonight to present you with a joint two-part proposal for your consideration. As you already know, the city received and will continue to receive significant amount of money from the developer agreements that the city has entered into or will enter into in the future. Up to this point, the money has been deposited into the general fund to pay for the ongoing city operations, as well as the significant capital improvements the city has made over the years. We would like to see the city also invest some of these funds in the environment. What we propose is simple. 1, the City Council, through council policy or otherwise, would authorize the set-aside of 10% of all developer agreement fees to be used for environmentally related uses. The types of uses should be broad and could include, among other things, acquisition of property for parkland, support of the Environmental Nature Center, hiring of grant writers to leverage city funds, or the establishment of environmentally favorable programs involving the business community. 2, the council would establish an environmental advisory committee made up of members of the business and environmental community to vet ideas and projects and to make recommendations to the council as to how the funds should be allocated. I believe this is the first time that the environmental and business communities have joined together to jointly propose a plan of action to the City Council for the protection and enhancement of our environment. I hope you will give the proposal your most favorable consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just want to support this idea. It builds on the successful Measure M model that we've been using countywide, and I think it's a good idea with all the occasional and ongoing issues that sometimes come up, that if we have a steady stream of income to address those. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Hill and members of the council, I am not president of SPAWN, just to clarify that. I don't want to be president of SPAWN. Somebody else is doing that. But when Steve first proposed the idea of this environmental fund, we had a big, long discussion about one aspect of it, and that is we agreed that it wasn't about arguing about projects from which the funds would come. It would, we in fact may be here 2 weeks from now on different sides of an issue. So, and that's okay. What it is about is the use of the funds that do accrue. And I've thought about it a lot because Dave, for one, has been involved for years in working with all the environmental organizations and trying to figure out what the city can help with and how any funds could be allocated. So the question is whether this is anything new or whether something could be done that would be helpful. So, and I've vetted it with a few of my friends, Mike Johnson and Howard Cork and some of the SPAWN people, but we haven't really talked about it a lot. But from my personal point of view, I think it has two major benefits for all of us, and that is it's always a good thing when you can bring all the different factions in the community together working on something that they all agree on. And I've been involved since 1997 was the first time I saw this really happen, when the state, in fact, started the Wetlands Recovery Project. I was sort of astounded because it was a state-sponsored thing. It had 17 agencies, all the elected leaders, and then it started with the grassroots. So all of us were invited to bring our projects forward and to work with everybody to come to some agreement. And that's worked out really well. And then a few years ago, we found again, we started working with OCTA on a common ground. And we were able to negotiate so that the transportation agency and the environmental groups could agree on major things that could be done, and it's worked out very well. So in each of those cases, though, it was about having some sort of a public advisory committee that was broad-based and that kind of looked at the whole picture. And it means that Howard Cork can't go and be part of this and say, I want stuff for the Newport Bay Conservancy, and I can't go there and say, I want stuff for the ENC. But we can go and everybody bring forth all of these things that are out there in this wonderful community and then begin to build some sort of criteria by which they can be judged and a priority list so we all know going forward where various funds can come together and help us all be more effective. So, in short, I appreciate your thinking about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Watt, always good to see you, always welcome here. Staff, do you have a comment about that as to how we might proceed?
Well, if this was something that was an interest to the council, you could ask that it be placed on the next agenda. And I don't know that now, if it's up to you, Mr. Mayor, if now is an okay time to do that. We had that already in the day, but there's no restrictions on that.
Well, I would ask that we do that.
And so then all 7 of you at the next meeting could decide if it's something you want to pursue further.
I would certainly support that, too.
I see 4 nods.
Okay.
You awake?
I was nodding.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to make sure. All right. All right. Then we will, is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak on a non-agenda item? Seeing none, then we'll move on to oral reports. Councilwoman Daigle?
I have none.
Councilman Henn?
Yes, the Balboa Village Advisory Committee met on Wednesday, June 11th. We approved some plans for increased maintenance in the village, and we had a very good review session with the new consultants for the design guidelines and streetscape and wayfinding project, and provided a lot of input to them as they launched their work on that. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Curry?
Nothing to report.
Councilwoman Gardner?
At the Water Quality Coastal Tidelands Committee met, and they will be proposing a way that we can work with homeowner associations to be sure that their catch basins are cleaned annually, just as the city cleans our catch basins, and that will be another step forward in water quality improvement.
Councilman Petros?
I have nothing to report tonight.
And Councilman Selledge?
I have nothing this evening.
And I have nothing this evening. So with that, we'll move into our public hearings. The first item is item number 13. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, good evening, Mayor Hill, members of the council. I'm Kim Brandt, your Community Development Director. The first item on your agenda this evening under public hearings is an appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of the Nasai Restaurant, which is located at 215 and 217 Riverside Avenue in the Mariners Mile area. This is an appeal brought to the City Council by a private property owner, and the appellant is here this evening, obviously, to address the City Council. We do have an overview of the project as approved by the Planning Commission and a summary of the points that were made in the appeal application. We would be happy to go through that information at this time at your desire, or we can follow the appellant, whatever the mayor would like.
I think let's go through it to start with.
All right. With that, I'll turn it over to Assistant Planner Makana Nova to give an overview.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. As Kim mentioned, my name is Makana Nova, Assistant Planner to the Planning Division. This appeal of the Nasai Restaurant application was originally approved by the Planning Commission and has been, as mentioned, appealed by the adjacent property owner. So the application includes a conditional use permit to amend an existing use permit authorizing a restaurant at 215 Riverside Avenue. See the location shown here in red. The request is to remodel the existing restaurant to add an outdoor dining patio. The restaurant currently has a Type 47 alcohol license, and the property is located in the Mariners Mile area, in Mariners Village, specifically within the Mariners Mile area. The request includes the approval of off-site parking at 2660 Avon Street and also additional supplemental parking at 2630 Avon Street. The application has been appealed by the adjacent resident at 2911 Cliff Drive, as you can see shown in the vicinity map. So these are the requests. As I mentioned, the interior of the restaurant would be remodeled. A new outdoor dining patio would be added to the restaurant. There is a patio out there right now, but there's no use permit information on file for that. So this would be a new patio and parking to go with that patio. The applicant,
but they are using a patio right now.
There is a
even
patio.
Though it's not permitted.
Correct.
Okay.
It was not constructed with permits. The application includes a request to extend the current hours of operation by 1 hour. They currently have a use permit to operate until 10 o'clock p.m. Sunday through Thursday and until 11 o'clock p.m. on Friday and Saturday. The request would extend the hours of operation by 1 additional hour daily to close at 11 o'clock p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and then at 12 o'clock midnight Friday and Saturday.
Does that trigger an operator's permit requirement?
Correct. It does trigger the operator license requirement. The application finally includes a parking management plan with off-site parking, annual parking passes for use in the municipal parking lot, and then valet parking. The uses have been very carefully designed to have offset hours.
Are you going to show the staging for the valet parking or not? Because if you're not going to if that's not part of your presentation, I'd like you to go back to the photo, the overhead, and show where it would be staged.
Sure. Here's a view of the site. I can show you on a site plan, actually. That would probably be better.
Well, if it's easier to tell me later, that's fine. I just want to see it at some point.
Sure, no problem. So just to quickly go over the appeal and the issues addressed in the appeal, the appellant, the neighbor, has brought forward 3 major issues regarding the restaurant application. The first being the parking area nuisance, the use of the parking lot, and the noise and light impacts that come with that use of the parking lot. Second is the driveway safety hazard. The driveway going out onto Riverside Avenue is presented as a hazard onto Riverside Avenue. And finally, that the use of the parking lot restricts pedestrian and bicycle access along Riverside Avenue. So now let's take a look at the project site. Here's a view of that parking area. And this is the on-site parking lot. There are 16 spaces to be provided on-site. The parking lot...
And these are currently being used?
The lot would be restriped.
But this area is being used for parking currently?
Correct. It is currently used as parking. The existing use permit does authorize it for use by the restaurant up until the current closing hours. There's no specific restrictions on the use of that parking lot under the current use permit. So there are those 16 spaces. It will be restriped to the last approved striping plan. And as I mentioned, there would be no valet parking on this site. All of the valet parking would occur off-site at the proposed off-site lots.
So if I'm coming and I'm going to have the valet parking, where am I pulling my car in? Right there?
It would be at entry here.
Okay.
So this would be the drop-off point on the property, on the site.
And then they just go follow those arrows out to the...
Right. So
Okay.
the valet would then take it out to the off-site lot. There are also 10 street spaces right in front of the restaurant. These spaces were once a part of the property, but were then taken by the city. So the city then, what's the right word, took over those 10 spaces, and the use permit was amended at that time to waive those 10 spaces. So here's a view of the existing parking lot. This is at the entry, and you can see the appellant's home is directly above, shown right here, where I'm highlighting. It is visible from that entry. Part of the reason it's so visible from this lot is the steep slope on the property. There's a grade difference of about 6 feet from the lower level of the parking lot to the upper level. Here's a view from that upper level of the parking lot. Again, you can see the appellant's home. And there is a break here in the landscaping. There's quite a bit of landscaping as you go further down into the parking area. So staff is recommending the addition of landscaping in this area along the rear of the property to help add to the screening between these two land uses.
But that won't, well, I guess you're going to have to figure out, if you fill that in with landscaping, is that going to help with they were complaining about lights. Do you have to put the landscaping so high that it interferes with their view, or can you keep the plants low enough and get both the view and the light protection?
Right. Well, we can certainly work with the owner on that, and I think there is a slope difference there on between the grade or the view out toward the ocean, for example, versus the view directly down into the parking lot.
Well, I'm sure they don't care about the view of the parking lot. I'm just thinking of their harbor view or whatever they have from their home.
Correct. Yeah. We can certainly work with the applicant.
Where is the property line on that? They have...
The rear property line
applicant
actually pushes back up further on the lot. Let me go back to the site plan. Doesn't quite show on there, but you can see it jogs along the rear.
That jog is a location where there's lack of vegetation.
Correct. So it would still be on the subject property. The property owner would have the authority to put vegetation there.
Right.
Here's a view directly toward the appellant's home. There's quite a bit of landscaping and vegetation, a fairly high wall. It's about 9 feet at the corner where the drive aisle turns toward Riverside Avenue. The second issue brought forth was the safety along Riverside Avenue. And this is the driveway concern right here. As vehicles exit, the applicant contends that there is not enough visibility for pedestrians and bicycles passing along the sidewalk here. And our traffic engineer has reviewed this thoroughly. We'll quickly take a look. Here's a view of that driveway. Here's a view looking north. This retaining wall does comply with the city standards for sight distance. You can see it is angled back. The city standard is 5 feet in a triangular form, and so there are no structures. It does remain visible along this space.
And there's night lighting?
Staff has suggested the addition of night lighting at this location to help improve that. The applicant is agreeable to that.
What are we venting at that location?
I'm not. I've been informed it's Edison vaults. Yes.
Can I maybe offer, you said staff is suggesting, I believe the lighting is a condition of approval.
Right, it is.
So it's not a suggestion, they will light this place.
It's included as a draft condition
Yes, okay.
at our suggestion, and the applicant's agreeable.
Okay, but it's a requirement.
Yes, it would be. Here's the view to the south. There is a storage structure in this location, and that does hinder sight distance. This was addressed at Planning Commission, and the applicant has agreed to lower this structure to a height of 30 inches per the city standard for sight distance. And the final issue raised was the access to Cliff Drive Park. As you mentioned earlier this evening, Cliff Drive Park has undergone quite a renovation. This is a commercial parking lot going out onto this right-of-way, and the applicant is requesting one additional hour of operation late in the evening after 10 o'clock p.m. to 11 o'clock p.m. on weekdays, and from 11 o'clock p.m. to midnight on weekends. So those hours of operation are not considered to be a concern for use of the park.
What time does the park close?
I've been informed it's 11 p.m.
Is it 11 or 10? I never know when our parks are supposed to close.
I've been told it's 11.
I'm sorry, what's the nexus between the hours of operations of the park and the restaurant?
Oh, I was just, if the park closes at 10, then it didn't matter what the new hours were because the park would be closed, so there couldn't be any conflict. I just wanted to know when the park closed.
Right, so we're just mentioning the use of how much will the park be used during those hours where the restaurant is expanding its hours of operation.
Gotcha.
Well, how does the restaurant interfere with the use of the park? I'm missing that part of it.
That was my point, yeah.
If I could, there's just a concern that there will be pedestrian and bicycle activity associated with the use of the park along Riverside Avenue, which, and there's a potential conflict with the driveway exiting the property on Riverside, given concerns with sight distance. That was just the correlation that was made as part of the appeal application.
So as I've mentioned, staff is recommending the provision of additional landscaping and lighting from what was approved at Planning Commission. Staff does recommend the upholding Planning Commission's original approval. I do want to mention this evening I have provided a revised draft resolution updating finding D to reflect the hours of operation as approved by Planning Commission, with closing hours at 11 o'clock p.m. for the weekdays, and then 12 o'clock midnight for the Friday and Saturday, and additionally closing of the outdoor dining patio at 10:30 p.m. rather than 10 o'clock p.m. And I finally wanted to mention we've received 3 public comment letters since the Planning Commission's approval of this item. 2 of the letters are in support, one of which is from a neighborhood with several signatures on it. And the third is a letter of opposition from a neighbor on Ocean View Drive. So your options this evening are to uphold Planning Commission's approval as recommended, to modify the original approval with additional conditions as necessary, or to reverse the approval and deny the applicant's request to amend the use permit. And that concludes my presentation. Are there any additional questions at this time?
Can you tell us where Ocean View Drive is?
Sure, let's go back to the vicinity map. It's directly across Riverside Avenue, and you can see highlighted here are the homes on Ocean View Avenue. You can't see the street name on there.
All right, thank you. At this point in time, with agreement with the council, we'll have the appellant to speak. All right, is the appellant here in the audience? Or representative thereof?
Good evening. My name is Jack Staub, and I live at 2911 Cliff. And actually, I submitted a bunch of pictures that show the hazards. And are those available or no? Pictures that I submitted in my application?
They were submitted as part of the appeal in your packet. They are in the packet as attachment 1.
Well, I'll point out that there's a couple of things that are a little different than what was just said. First off, the current parking lot, Nisei, is not used by the Nisei customers. I've never seen any Nisei customer use that parking lot. The only time that parking lot is used is it's 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And that's because there is a real hazard there. And if you could take a look at my application, you can see we've got some photos there.
Are they labeled R1, -1, -2, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's right. Let's see here. Yeah, so let's go to R2-1. So you can see here, I've got my kids going forward, and my wife Jade is in the car that's in the Nisei parking lot you can see kind of hidden away there. At that point, the car has no visibility whatsoever of the kids. And now, once the kids come into view, that's the first point they come into view. And something I want to point out here is this parking lot is terraced into the hill, and so you have about a 10-foot elevation from where the child is here to where the car is. So this makes this a particularly dangerous situation. We experienced one time where a car actually locked up its brakes coming down that hill where a kid ran in front of it. And so it is a really serious situation. If you haven't driven it, don't underestimate the challenge here.
Let me just clarify what you're saying here. Obviously, if this is the way it is, 1 hour more or less isn't going to make it any more or less dangerous. So you're not talking about the hours here. You're talking just about the configuration that needs to be changed.
The use of that upper terrace of the parking lot, yes. So it has never been, we've been there 7 years, and it's never been used by restaurant patrons. It's just used during the day. So yeah, I don't think it should be used at all, particularly by just the general public, because this is a very, very difficult parking lot to exit, and it does present a real safety hazard to the public.
Did during the public hearing at the Planning Commission, were there any police reports of any accidents or anything? And this has been a restaurant and office building for many, many years. Hello, staff?
I'm sorry, Mayor Hill, could you... Do we have any accident reports from...
We don't have accident reports on file.
Because there are none, or just because we don't have any access to it?
We haven't checked. I haven't heard any. The police department hasn't specifically mentioned any issues out there. There have been no calls for service on this property.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, the parking lot has not been used by the general public. It's only used 9 to 5 during the Monday through Friday. So at night, it's just not used. It's totally empty. Yeah, it's used by the tenants of the office building. So it's our belief that it should continue to be used in that way, or else, this particular danger be addressed, because I think it is a liability issue for the city, and it's also, the use of that parking lot in particular, that upper part is a real distraction for the 4 homes that are there. Okay, I think that's all I have, unless you have any more questions.
Any further questions of the appellant at this point in time?
If, say, there was some way of making this safer, this driveway, would that remove your complaints about the project?
Well, if the upper lot was not used at night, I mean, that definitely would address my concern, and in terms of safety and nuisance. So yes, that would be.
So it's not the restaurant per se, and the expansion. It's
Oh,
the
no,
fact
no,
that where it is, what the impact will be, the new traffic.
Actually, I've met with Jeff Hall, and I'm looking forward to the restaurant, so I don't have any opposition whatsoever to the restaurant. I think Jeff is going to be a great addition to the neighborhood, and we're looking forward to him opening up his restaurant. Our concern is just specifically that upper terrace of the parking lot and its impact on us and the safety to the public.
Seeing no further questions, thank you very much. At this point in time, is the applicant present or a representative? For everyone's general knowledge, we're going to have the applicant give their remarks. I'll open it up to the public for any remarks, and then call up the appellant once again if they would like to make any final concluding remarks. So please proceed. Give us your name, if you would.
My name is Jeffrey Hall, Mayor, Council, and the city staff who I've been working with quite a bit on this project. Thanks for hearing us. You know, there is a reason why this project was voted unanimously. We've definitely figured out each concession, each concern that has been drawn, from sound issues to resounding support from the police department, through our background and through our history of who we are, to especially celebrating the Mariners Mile plan, which a big part of that is the mixed use of parking lots because of the lack of space, to encourage outdoor dining, to encourage pedestrians, and you know, even reverting to approved plans for that parking lot, which that's been a restaurant since 1972. It's part of the property. It's the property's parking. You know, that all being said, we're hugely community-driven guys. You know, every other place we've opened up properties, we get very involved positively with the city, positively with our neighbors. We definitely have been trying to find a accommodating solution with our neighbors, talking to them directly. I mean, at the end of the day, the last thing we want to do is alienate anybody. You know, we're about our local. And so as it relates to the appeal, you know, limiting use of the parking lot is difficult for us to do, as far as to recommend that. We'd love to continue to work with the neighbors, to continue that dialogue. If there's ways that we can, you know, personally address issues, whether it's, you know, I'm kind of at a loss to address that. You know, but I think showing that we continue to make these concessions, you know, happily, when it comes to the landscaping, when it comes to the lighting, I think these are substantial and important ways to help address these concerns, and you know, we're willing to do those things. With that balance, of course, we've got to find a way to remain sustainable and open as well. So. Other than that, I thank you, and if there's any questions that you have for our group as well.
Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to open this now to the public. Is there any member of the public that would like to address this issue?
Good evening, council members, Mayor Hill, and committee and staff. My name is Joey Moore. I'm an attorney, and I represent Marcel and Clint Hufford. They are the owner of the building in question, and they are the landlord for the applicant. And essentially speaking, we are here to address three specific issues and whether these issues do create a measurable impact.
Mr. Moore, can you please speak into the microphone?
Surely. The issue is whether the additional 1 hour of operation daily will create an impact to the neighborhood, in particular the appellants. The staff has suggested a planting plan that will greatly reduce, perhaps eliminate altogether, the shining of any headlights, direct or indirect, on the second story of the appellant's home. And it's only, if you look at the slide, it's only addressed to a portion of the second story residence. We believe that the planting plan that is being recommended, even on the chain link fence, will greatly reduce any negative light impact on a portion of the second story residence. The second question is whether the additional hour of operation is going to have a negative impact on the means of ingress and egress onto Riverside Avenue. The staff has pointed out compliance with the 5-foot triangular cutback, and that they've also recommended, and the applicant has agreed, to reduce the wall on the Coast Highway portion of the Riverside exit down to 30 inches. That will greatly enhance the sight lines that would otherwise be impaired. We would also be in favor of putting a mirror to assist the driver of vehicle as they exit the parking lot to be able to look upwards towards Riverside Avenue, or conversely in the other direction. One thing does have to be clarified, and that is what appears to be, I believe, a misrepresentation in part of the appeal. If one were to look at page 1 of the summary of appeal, they are suggesting that the historical usage of the back lot is confined only to 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. That is incorrect. The rear parking area has in fact been used, and maybe because the appellant is not aware of that, is testimonial that it's not that bad of a problem. But certainly the board can the council can direct questions to the applicant as to the current usage of the back lot, and he will be able to speak from experience. The third issue deals with Cliff Drive Park, and I would submit that the principal optimal use for Cliff Drive Park is for the residents of Newport Heights, the residents themselves. They're going to access the park by never even approaching or coming within 50 yards of the Riverside entrance. They're going to come down Riverside Avenue, stop at the park, and then go back up the hill towards Riverside Avenue. So the question again is, does the extension of operation by 1 additional hour from either 10 p.m. to 11, Monday or Sunday through Thursday, or alternatively from 11 to 12 on Friday and Saturday, going to have any impact? Well, we know Friday or Saturday it will have no impact, and those are going to be the higher days because the park closes at 11 p.m. So the question is, what type of impact will residents experience by coming down Riverside Avenue and heading to Cliff Drive Park? I would submit they would have no problems because they won't be within 50 yards of the entrance to Riverside Drive. The staff report has really extolled the virtues of this particular project, and they have stated that architecturally this project will greatly improve the quality of not only the existing building, but will also promote the further revitalization of other commercial properties in the Mariners Mile area. And we submit that this particular appeal should be denied because they haven't provided any empirical or substantive evidence of the problems that they suggest exist. So we're in favor of the applicant's proposal. We believe it'll be a boon to the area. And from my client's perspective, it represents more than 36% of the rentable square footage. And if this particular restaurant is to succeed, and they've maintained at the May 8th hearing that every additional hour is very important to its overall bottom line margin, we're in favor of standing in favor of that success. So we would encourage that the staff report's recommendation and the Planning Commission's approval be upheld. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak on this topic?
My name's Tim Davey, and I live at 2907 Cliff Drive, directly above the Stobbs. I find the question about the nexus between the use of the park and the restaurant to be quite interesting. You state that the public hours for the park end at 11 o'clock at night. Well, I live above the park, and in practicality, they don't end at 11 o'clock at night. And I think that the type of patron that's going to, and I'm in favor of an upgraded restaurant there as well. You know, we frequent Nasai, but the type of patron that's going to be drinking late at night is going to, I believe, end up in that park. They're there at past midnight all the time, as it is right now. And I think the proximity to that parking lot and the Staub residence and the houses above it is a very serious concern to me as well. So I'm basically here to support all the points that, that the applicants have made this evening, and would strongly urge the council to take them very seriously, and to accept the modification of the conditional use permit and roll the hours of the use of the rear parking lot back from 9 to 5 as they have been in the 24 years since I built the house above the restaurant and adjacent to the park. Thank you.
You acknowledged support of the applicant. Did you mean the appellant?
I did. I'm sorry.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else in the public like to speak?
I'm part of the applicant, but I'm also a resident of Newport. I'm the designer for the project.
Could we have your name, please?
Yeah, my name is Eric Benneker.
Thank you.
There's a couple points that I want to make. Number one, the restaurant has been there since 1972. It was successful. For the last 8 or so years, it has not been successful. Therefore, there have been no customers parking up in the upper lot. But anyone that used to go to the stuffed noodle in Nisei in the early 2000s, it was a pretty busy place. You know, people parked in the upper lot. So to say it's never been used after 5 o'clock is incorrect. I also want to say I don't think the people that are going to be patronizing our establishment will be going up to the park to drink late night. I think those might be 18, 19, 20-year-old kids doing that. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the public?
Good evening, members of the council, city staff, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Phil Becerra, and I have the privilege of serving on the Santa Ana Planning Commission. My colleagues and I make land use decisions that we believe will most benefit our city. Our city has granted 2 conditional use permits to Mr. Hall, and I could not be any happier with his business's performances. I enthusiastically support Jeff Hall in his latest culinary endeavor. My only concern, though, is that this endeavor is in Newport Beach and not in Santa Ana. Not only is he very supportive of his businesses surrounding communities through philanthropic means, he is also very considerate and meticulous about his businesses surrounding environments. His establishments in downtown Santa Ana close their doors when they're supposed to, and the patrons are cleared out immediately, and the exterior is cleaned every night. I'm very proud of the dining establishments in downtown Santa Ana, and I do not make it a habit to come to other cities and speak about them. But I truly believe that his business will be a fine addition to your city, and that he will work with you and your staff and nearby residents to mitigate any potential concerns. If I didn't believe in him and his businesses, I wouldn't be here. I'd be dining in downtown Santa Ana right now. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the public who would like to speak?
Mayor Hill and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier, and if I might, I wanted to divert your attention slightly to a longer-range planning issue that this application raises. This was discussed a little bit at the Planning Commission, didn't get really a clear resolution, at least in my mind. If you looked at the staff report, you will see if this upper parking lot was fully used, there's still a requirement for 16 off-site parking spaces, and in the resolution you're being asked to consider finding H2 on page 7 explains to you that part of those 16 spaces will be satisfied by the employer, the applicant, purchasing 10 annual employee passes, they are called, so that 10 of the employees will be parking at a city-owned parking lot, which is a couple of blocks away from the location. And we're hoping that that would solve the problem that there will always be 10 employees at that. But if you look deeper into the agenda packet tonight, way in here on pages 171 and 172, you'll see that the staff has supplemented this with an attachment CC16. And actually what they're recommending that the employer buy are our city annual passes that allow people to park at these blue pole places, blue pole marked spots in parking lots, I take it. But the problem is they're not really employee passes. They go with cars, and they're sold to the person to go with a specific car. The sticker has to be stuck on the car. So there will be 10 employees that will have these, but at any one time, the 10 employees who show up on a given day can't necessarily use all these 10 passes. If somebody is out sick, the person who comes in to fill out in for them doesn't have that. So the council, if it's going to use this as a solution for parking problems in the future, might really want to consider some kind of an employee parking pass program, as I think it's doing in Balboa Village, but it might be needed citywide. Thank you.
Very much. Additional public speakers?
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Bill Kenny. I'm actually here this evening on another matter as a prospective nominee to the Harbor Commission. However, I have been a longtime customer of Nisei. One of the goals of our community is the enhancement of Mariner's Mile. I've looked at the proposed upgrades, and I'm excited to see that that restaurant could be expanded and better utilized, and we need more independent operators in our city. We've got Darden and Landry and Houston's that have multiple operations, and in the past I have used that upper parking lot, so I would just speak in support of the applicant.
Thank you very much. Come on down.
I'd like to address some of the comments made about the Cliff Drive, the access to Cliff Drive Park.
I'm just recognizing you.
Yes, I'm the applicant, or the...
Right. If you want to, let's see if anybody else wants to speak, because I'm only going to give you one wrap-up. And so,
okay.
Is there anybody else in the public that would like to speak? All right, you're it.
Okay.
Go for it.
So if you look at the Mariner's Mile area, and you take a look at the pedestrian traffic that flows into Mariner's Mile, there's most of the volume comes right down Riverside from the Newport Heights area, and especially during the day, it's massive on weekends, and even during the week, it's very steady. I think with the redevelopment of the Cliff Drive Park, that we're going to have many more people using that park at night. To jog and so on and so forth. So, I've seen people regularly there, 12 o'clock or so, and I think that's, going to continue. With the hazard that I was talking about, and I do think it's a hazard that's unappreciated here, but if you have that hazard in the pathway of the primary artery for the for that Mariner's Mile area, you're really going to cut down on that pedestrian traffic. And I know somebody else said that there's no pedestrian traffic from Newport Heights into Mariner's Mile. That's absolutely wrong. And so what I would request is that there be a traffic study done to see where the pedestrian flow is and whether or not this hazard would impede that. And the reason I bring this up is the justification for the extended hours was based on the Mariner's Mile redevelopment plan. And the primary, or one of the primary goals of that, is to maximize pedestrian traffic. And it seems like what we're doing here by putting this hazard in this place is impeding pedestrian traffic. So it seems like it's a misapplication of that plan.
All right. Any further questions of the council? Last call on public comments. Councilman Petros.
I had some comments that I wanted to make on the assertions in the appeal. The assertions are anecdotal as far as I can tell. As part of the Bicycle Master Plan Oversight Committee, we get regular updates, monthly updates on the occurrence of accidents, pedestrian and bicycle, in the city of Newport Beach. When we started the Bicycle Master Plan, we were given an oversight of the accidents in Newport Beach. Not once was this location identified as a significant safety impact by our police department as part of any safety statistics, collisions, or accidents. I reviewed the site triangles, and I looked at the Caltrans Highway Design Manual for sight distance, and this meets those requirements empirically, not anecdotally, empirically. By virtue of putting a light there, it will illuminate that area even further. And I might suggest that we add a condition to put a stop bar at the foot or the toe of the slope to, in fact, reinforce the fact that vehicles must stop there. If vehicles are stopped there, not only is the sight distance standard met, it is exceeded. So even more so, the safety of that area is there. Now I'm going to talk about anecdote. Daily, in the morning and in the evening, I run. And I run through the Heights. And daily, in the morning and in the evening, my running path takes me by this exact location, on the weekdays and on the weekends. And I will tell you, not once, not during the regular office hours, not during the evening times, not once have I been in a situation where I felt threatened by a vehicle on my runs, daily, in the morning and in the evening. In fact, I might suggest that the area by Avon, adjacent to the post office, might be more hazardous than this location. I just do not see the empirical evidence that this represents a hazard, nor do I find the hours of operation in any way leading to a conclusion that that would exacerbate a hazard. So I'm not connecting the dots there. With regards to the Cliff Drive Park area, in fact, that will be continued to be used by the residents of Cliff Drive. And to the Mr. Moore's observation, I might posit that most of the folks from the Heights would come down into the park off of Cliff Drive, not even coming down Riverside to circulate back up, but use the stairs and the sidewalks up on Cliff Drive to circulate down into the park, never once getting anywhere near this location. So I cannot find validity in the appeal on those three foundations, and therefore I can't support the appeal.
Any other council members? Councilman Henn?
Yeah, I don't know about the traffic from the park down Riverside, but I think there is a regular amount of pedestrian activity going up that street, basically from the Mariners Mile area. And so I would support Councilmember Petros's suggestion that there be some additional safety markings, or you mentioned a stop bar, something like stop pedestrian crossing. I don't know what it might be, but I think it probably would be worthwhile because people are coming downhill in their cars there. So I would support that. But likewise, I don't see enough objective evidence here that we have a problem, especially with the additional landscaping that's being proposed. It would have been nice to see some sort of a simulation, but I have to believe from the level of your car, if that landscaping does rise 6 or 7 or 8 feet above, where it was planted, that it would have a substantial light calming effect on that. So for those reasons, I'll be supporting the staff recommendation here to move forward with the project.
Any further comments by Councilman Gardner?
Well, I thought Mr. Mosher made a good point. Is there any way we can, as far as the employee passes, do something about that so that we get maximum usage by the employees instead of just the 10 who end up with them on their cars?
When we reviewed the application, we asked the applicants how many employees total they expected to have, and they said 10. So that's where that number was based off.
Oh, not just 10 a night, but 10 overall?
Right. And the applicant,
okay.
in fact, accurate, or?
Yeah, so, and if we can at least follow up a little bit on that and do what we can, I think that would be helpful.
Councilman Curry.
Well, I would agree with the comments of my colleagues, and so I would move the staff recommendation to deny the appeal conditioned upon a stop bar or other traffic mitigator at the exit to the parking lot, and following up with Councilmember Gardner's idea for assuring that the employees will have full access to the designated parking passes.
I'll second that.
All right. Any further comments or questions? We have a motion. We have a second. I'd ask you to please vote.
The motion carries unanimously, 7-0.
We'll continue with current business. Item number 14, please. Do we have a staff report?
Just one moment, Mayor Hill, while we change. Mayor Hill,
Please.
members of the council, this item on your agenda this evening is a discussion item. The Planning Commission had forwarded to the City Council a memorandum just outlining some concepts or ideas about using the use of vehicle lifts in non-residential applications in relationship to meeting required parking spaces in conjunction with any type of use permit or discretionary review process. The photograph that you have on your screen shows a type of vehicle lift system. I think there's a variety of systems that are out on the market today. This is a system that's not screened at all. We do not have this type of system currently in the city of Newport Beach, but it does show that it gives the ability to stack cars in the so that you basically double the number of parking vehicles in the same surface footprint. We actually do have vehicle lifts currently in use in Balboa Village, and they've been in there, been in place since 1983, and it's totally enclosed within a parking structure, garage type of building, and there are 60 lifts that are currently within the structure, and I think all but 4 are currently operational.
How many?
60.
60?
60. So 56 are currently in operation. And then recently, the Planning Commission did review a proposal for 441 Old Newport Boulevard. That was a conditional use permit to allow a portion of the surface parking lot to have the vehicle lifts employed. This is a rendering of the screening structure. It is solid on the rear and on the front as it faces Old Newport Boulevard, but then it's screened in a material that is intended to complement the medical office building. So there are 11 vehicle lifts proposed for this project and that were approved by the Planning Commission. So in the space of 11 physical spaces, you can park 22 cars. In addition, condition of approval is the use of valet attendants for the parking of the vehicles. No one is allowed to self-park in this application. So the question before the Planning Commission that they posed to the City Council can be found in your staff report, but they are just bringing up the question that the zoning code doesn't address vehicle lifts. It's silent on this type of parking mechanism. And the question is that an appropriate mechanism to use to meet required parking spaces? And whether or not that this is an appropriate type of parking mechanism when you have a business with rapid parking turnover, and whether or not it's appropriate to have valets in attendance and as an accessory or an integral part of using this type of parking system. So they're looking to the City Council whether or not you want to explore this further, possibly through a code amendment or through a city policy, or just to review it on a case-by-case basis. And that's the question before you.
Well, I asked that we look at it. It seems to me this is pretty big. It could really transform a lot of things, and I think that we should, I for one, don't want to see us do it on a case-by-case basis. I think we should limit, how do we want to limit it, what things should we put on. So I would like to see us explore it further, and as I say, to decide, one, that we want to do it or not, and two, if we do, what provisions do we want to make in controlling this.
Other comments by council?
Yeah. So has the Planning Commission made suggestions about how to go about, I know they made a decision in one particular case, but have they provided any guidance about how they might go about regulating this?
No, they have not. They were just raising the question to the City Council as to whether or not you wanted them to explore the issue further.
Yeah, that would be my preference, is to hear what the Planning Commission has to say about this and toss it back to them to give us some recommendations.
I think I'll take the liberty of chiming in on this. From my point of view, I'm not sure I want to see these all over Newport Beach. And so I'm not real favorable towards setting up a procedure of regulation and that type of thing, which to me then connotates that in fact we encourage them. And it seems to me that, I've gone in the parking garage, the ones that we have there, and I'm surprised to hear that only 4 are inoperable. They rust, they're not maintained, and after they're installed and the code is met, no one is very interested in them. And no matter what you do, they're still ugly. And to me, if you were going to regulate them, you'd have to treat them like an elevator. You'd have to have annual inspections, you'd have to have certificates, you'd have to have maintenance records, because if they become inoperable, they automatically fall out of compliance with their parking regulations. And so then it becomes a code enforcement. And this is a potential major hornet's nest as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not sure I want to drive around and look at our facilities in Newport Beach, which are overbuilt and underparked and have strange things that solve the problem.
Why don't we go quickly, at least, and see? I'll make a motion that we not allow these in the city, and we can get a vote on that. And if people do want to at least pursue it further, then we'll know. But if we have a no vote, then we can just stop right there. Right. So that's my motion, that we do not allow these.
We have a second for purpose of discussion?
Okay, well that...
I'll second it for purpose of discussion.
Mayor.
Leslie, do you
Yeah,
have something?
From my standpoint, if we only have 2 of these in the city right now, I don't see why we want to try to get into the business of regulating them. If in fact they start to become prevalent, we start getting requests for it, perhaps at that time we want to address them, but at this point in time it just seems a lot of work chasing something that's not a problem, and we've got plenty of problems we really need to work on.
Would the maker of the motion amend the motion to say that instead a motion to not address at this point in time?
All right.
I think the proper motion would be to not initiate the zoning code amendment. I think that solves the problem.
All right. And I assume that's what the motion is at this point in time. That's what the second is at this point in time. Anybody else like to comment on that?
I'm sorry, what is the motion again, please?
I think the proper motion would be to not move forward with initiating a zoning code amendment, and just basically let the matter rest if you don't want to consider it at this time, if you don't want to consider regulations.
Councilman Petros.
Mayor Hill, I would agree with Councilmember Selich. In the 80s or 90s, we got 60 of these enclosed in a parking structure. Most recently, we have 11. There are thousands of parking spaces in the city of Newport Beach. I don't see this as the bum's rush to install these throughout the city, and I would not suggest that we have something that is a big issue. And in your inimitable words, this may be a solution looking for a problem. I think that there are some very, very unique parking solutions that are being used throughout the United States and Europe that, at some point we may have to start to look at, and we can get to that when it does come, but that demand is far off in the future, and I don't know that we really need to be taking this on right now.
All right. Councilman Curry.
Well, I think a solution in search of a problem is a good way to put it. I actually never knew we had these down in Balboa Village, but I guess this answers the question of where your car goes when you drop it off at Harborside while there's two proms going on upstairs. And it's a particular solution that has applicability, and in some cases it's a tool. It's just simply that's all it is. It's a tool that we may want to use. We used it on Old Newport Boulevard. So I would not be for prohibiting these outright. I think we need to be very careful about them. I, like the mayor, I think they're kind of ugly. I think they look like the bad part of New York City, and I'm not sure I want to authorize them to encourage developers to use them so as to minimize on-site surface parking. But in particular applications, they're good, and they're good for the neighborhoods. So I don't think this is ready for prime time. Let's sort of, I'm going to support the motion, and then let's deal with these on a case-by-case basis.
Further comments? Then we have a motion and a second. I'd ask you to vote. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to screw up every meeting at least once. Is there anyone from the public? Twice, and thank you for reminding me. Anyone from the public like to comment on this item?
Mayor Hill and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. I was at the Planning Commission meeting where this was discussed, and the reason for the letter to you was they had a certain sense of frustration. They said they are not the policymakers, you are the policymakers, and they didn't know what your policy or direction was on this, whether you wanted to encourage them, not encourage them, or what. And I guess they will have to read the minutes of tonight's discussion or watch the video to try to get that direction. Short of putting something in the zoning code and initiating an amendment, it would probably be nice and helpful to the Planning Commission if there was some way for this decision-making body to communicate to the Planning Commission what its general feeling is about it. Some of you have said that, but I really don't know that they have enough to go on at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to comment? I'll bring it back and ask the council to vote.
With Councilmember Henn voting no, the motion carries 6-1.
Thank you. Item number 15.
So, Mr. Mayor and council members, this item is a proposed urgency ordinance that would establish a moratorium on certain types of marine activities permits that relate to vessels propelled by water above the surface of Newport Harbor. It's a long sentence. Hopefully it gave Chris enough time to...
new agenda.
No? Hopefully I have the right agenda. Did you have any staff report comments, Chris, or you'll go with...
All of my comments are in the staff report. I'd be happy to summarize or answer any questions.
Why don't you just briefly talk about why you think the need for this urgency ordinance and the moratorium exists for the folks at home?
There's currently one business in the harbor who has this type of operation, and he's been in business for at least 3 years. I'll say 3 to 4. And over the years, I've received comments from the public, from homeowners, from boaters about how that operation fits in the harbor and whether or not it's appropriate or not. 3 or 4 years ago, when they approached us, we approved their marine activities permit, not envisioning that there would be other companies also applying in the future to compete for the same space in the harbor. In the past few months, we've had 2 potential applicants come to the city, and they've had discussions with us and talked about the application. They haven't applied just yet, but upon receiving those, I thought to myself that now might be a prudent time to bring this topic to the City Council to see if it was worth considering, and if so, would the council like the Harbor Commission to take a look at it and evaluate this operation, this type of operation in the harbor, and see whether or not it's appropriate or what locations it might be most appropriate in, and perhaps establish some ground rules. And I say that because it would fall under the category of a different type of business than one would normally see in a harbor, where our harbor has been around for a long time, as we know, and generally you see boaters and people renting different types of boats and sailboats and duffy boats and large boats and sailing and so on and so forth. So this falls under the unusual category, and I felt that one seemed adequate at the time, and we responded by that application. But now that we have 2 other potential folks, I thought it would be prudent to bring it to your attention and ask for direction.
We don't, there's certain things that we don't let in the harbor. Paragliding, you have to go out the harbor mouth and out the ocean.
Yes, yes, because you're towed behind a boat. Yeah, and you'd be going fast in that instance.
All right.
Or
but this could also go out in the ocean, presumably. I mean, the water might be a little rougher, but still the mechanism is the same. Is that correct?
Yes,
you don't have to be land-based.
we advised the third potential applicant that if he wanted to go out in the ocean, he would be more than welcome to go out in the ocean.
Yeah.
We also, if I could clarify there is a provision in the code which doesn't apply here, but I just wanted to clarify and make sure that we're on the same page, that air propulsion craft are not permitted in the harbor, i.e. Planes that could land on the water. This is a water-propelled device, not an airplane-style device or craft.
But what I see in paddling around, I've paddled in the vicinity of it, and you don't have necessarily an expert at it. You have someone who may never have done it before, right? I mean, that's the thing. They're not people who are just out there showing off. They're people who are experimenting for the first time and may have very little control over the apparatus, which is noisy. But that's also, with the traffic we get, it seems to me there's also that aspect of it, of just somebody not quite in control and getting into somebody else's way, which could cause all sorts of problems.
Potentially that is the case. Now, as I understand it, on at least their first lesson, they are remotely controlled by the operator who is standing, by the company who is standing by in a close proximity, to prevent injury and accidents that could happen. But there is there appears to be a fair degree of unpredictability, as you mentioned, and your observations, I think, are duly noted.
How does this water propulsion work, that the individual is lifted?
Well, it's simply that there's a, I'm going to loosely define it as a jet ski type device that is floating on the water, and connected to that is, I'm just going to say, a 30-foot, 20-foot round tube, flexible tube that's connected from the jet ski type device to a person, whether the person is wearing a backpack style device or whether they have it on their shoes or on a board. And it pushes water from that jet ski type device up through a tube down through your backpack. And that water is going down and forcing and propelling you up. So you're flying. How you're flying, whether there's a board or whether it's strapped to some boots or whether it's on a backpack is anyone's imagination, but it's the same general principle.
Now, am I understanding this correctly, that we're not going to prohibit the guy who's currently operating the business? Is that correct with this ordinance? This is just for new businesses?
That is correct, and the intent here is exactly that. Not that we're trying to favor anybody, but I saw this as an opportunity to take a step back and evaluate whether or not it's appropriate and maybe some parameters on how it might be.
And for those concerned about the ability to operate in the ocean, I would note that the person who has the current business actually sit out from Newport Harbor and use the jetpack going all the way to Catalina. I think I was here for his going away party. So you can operate them in the ocean and perhaps lessen the chance of ending up into a pier.
Less noise impact on the neighbors.
Councilman Petros?
Yeah, Chris, I would support the urgency ordinance, and as you review this, I thought there was some compelling arguments in a recent correspondence regarding noise, regarding wakes, damage to other vessels. So as you do frame this up, I'll be looking for your thoughts on that, or staff's thoughts on that, as you come up with a remedy.
Via a Harbor Commission ad hoc committee is my proposal.
Councilman Hinn.
Yeah, I'll support the recommendation to have another look at this too, although I may be the only member on the dais here who's actually used the jetpack. It is.
Tell about it.
It is, and I didn't have any problems. There is a kill switch that the operator has that can immediately drop you down in the water if it looks like you're getting a little out of control. And it does take a little bit of skill to get used to it, and you don't really feel like hot dogging with it until you do have some skill level. I can say that. But nevertheless, these devices do use a fair amount of the footprint of water in the first place, and they do create wake. So I think it probably is worthwhile to have some guidance that the Harbor Commission can provide on the use of them.
Councilman Selledge.
Thank you. I really don't have anything worthwhile to add to the discussion except to say that Keith was on the beginning end of the trip. I was the first boat that he saw when he got into Catalina, and it was a very impressive sight.
Your boat or his arrival?
Both.
Oh, thank you. Councilman Curry.
Well, just a couple of things. I think this is a good motion, and I think it's a good motion, and I want to be very clear about this. Not that we want to necessarily prohibit this or other types of activities in the harbor. We want to promote the harbor as a place where people can come and recreate, whether they do it on the beach or whether they do it on the bay or whether they do it at the New Marina Park or wherever it's an appropriate place to do it. But because of the nature of these, it's important that we step back and we think about where in the harbor should they be operated or on the beach. What kind of safety rules do we need, and how do they work in proximity to neighbors relative to noise? How do we deal with things like parking for people who come to use these attractions, et cetera? So when the Commission and staff go back to look at this, I want it to be with an attitude of how do we create a framework for us to broaden what's offered as options for people who visit Newport Harbor in terms of visitor serving amenities going forward, not how can we prohibit everything. And I think this gives us the time to do that in a way that's thoughtful and sensible and works in conjunction with the neighbors so that everybody remains a good neighbor and a good business person throughout the harbor.
Seeing no further council comments, I'm going to open this to the public. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this item? If so, now is the time.
Good evening. I'm Devin Kelly, and I'm a Leo resident, and I've lived in Newport for 57 years. And I can tell you right now there is another company that's operating a jet-propelled thing. It's called Fly Jets, and they are operating, and they are in the bay. And I have sent a letter to Mr. Webb, I think I wrote a letter to. So I'm in strong support of this, doing the urgency situation for safety for one reason. I'm a boater. I powerboat, I sail, and safety's huge. They're non-moving, so a lot of times they'll just stay in one place, and they don't move about, which boats, as you know, all move about, move up and down the bay. They don't understand the boating rules in the right-of-way. They, if we have small Sabbath sailors out there, they don't understand to move when the small Sabbath sailors are coming down. Of course, summer we have how many yacht clubs? 4 yacht clubs with 400 kids out sailing. They're noisy, really noisy. I think that, I know they went to Catalina, and I know all about it, but just I think that we should definitely hold off and see what comes down the pike on this. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak on this item? Please come on down.
Hello, Mayor, council members. My name is Gus Casito. I am president of Flyjet Sports, one of the companies that is currently applying for a permit to be able to fly in the bay there in Newport Beach. We have been doing some evaluation of the type of business plan to put together for quite some time. We have worked very closely with the City Council. We have flown in the last two Christmas parties, Christmas boat parades that they've had out there. Been invited. We've been a featured guest of them. In terms of looking at safety, noise, and everything else, we've worked very closely with the Permit Commission in order to get that going. So what I'm asking here is an exception to the ordinance on individuals who have invested a considerable amount of time and effort at looking at all these issues and making sure that we comply to this. We've working real closely with them. We believe we have a nice elaborate plan to be able to accommodate all of these issues. The lady that was just up here, just to give you an example, I personally met with her. She gave me a call. She addressed her concerns just like she did now. And I personally met with her at a Starbucks and addressed some of those particular issues that she had in there. So I'm willing to work with that. But to all of a sudden just have a complete cutoff from the effort that we have put into this, I think, as a matter of fact, I like to think that I may be the one that be able to help you with some of these issues that you're currently addressing as to how to take care of some of these issues. I'll give you some examples. For instance, from a safety point of view, just to give you an example, the operators that we currently have on there are veteran, Marine, Navy, I'm not going to say Navy SEALs, but they're Navy veterans, if you will. So they're very highly qualified individuals. They're very familiar with the boating characteristics on there. On the noise issues, there are two, the particular system that we operate a jet ski that has a tube that attaches to a foot pedal type of mechanism, which it's just a jet ski that's sitting out there. I love for anyone who, especially individuals who have already flown this, would testify that, yeah, sometimes part of the problem, and this goes back to the plan that we have together, part of the problem is that maybe the routes that have been assigned or have been labeled to be able to fly this is too close to the homes. But we have a plan in which there are areas, there's a lot of bays, there's a lot of little coves and so on that could easily be moved. One of the things that we've addressed is the movement of the system itself, that we are currently stationary. The system can actually operate at about 5 miles per hour, so it could actually move throughout the whole bay in order to give a break, if you will, from anybody seeing it on a constant basis at one particular location. So what I'm asking for here is just an exception to this particular ordinance to Flyjet Sports, and allow us to continue to do the great work I think that we've done in developing this and bringing this to Newport Beach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the public who would like to speak?
Hello, David Casado again. May I address the gentleman and ask a question?
No. You can address the council and ask.
All right, council, my only question is, ask these operators if they're able to monitor VHF Channel 16. They have been in the Christmas Boat Parade, and as you know, the Christmas Boat Parade has many boats out there, including very large charter boats, and we lose the Duffys and this gentleman sometimes under the bows of our boats because they're very large, and it's hard to keep track of this gentleman because it's dark, and he's dark, his whole system is dark. And quite a few of us this last year had to try to work around him and it really caused an issue. So if he can monitor or have a handler that monitors 16, not only would that bring it into compliance legally, because you're required to monitor 16 on any boat with an engine, it would be very helpful if you would have a handler monitoring 16 for us in the boat parade. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. That's very good input. Anyone else would like to speak?
Mayor, City Council, my name is Dean O'Malley. I'm the president of Jetpack America. Some of you do know me from my trip to Catalina a couple years ago. I'm here to speak to everyone about the state of affairs with the jetpack operations. Obviously, we've been here operating for about 3 years, and we've adapted as best we can to accommodate the local residents, the fact that we are a new operation, we're a new business, we're a new concept. We're not a boat that's traveling along the surface of the water, we're flying above it. So we've gone through numerous location changes, process changes, and our whole goal is to make it work for the city. We want to work for the city, we want to work with the residents, we want to work with the tourists. We do see ourselves as a draw to the city. Literally today, this morning, we shot a TV program with Visit Newport Beach, featuring the jetpack activity, trying to bring more people in. So that's something we do try and focus on, is that we are different, we are unique, we do need some special consideration. I think it's a good idea to look at us and have some discussions, but we do feel that we can operate safely. So just a few points that I picked up on. The open ocean, clearly you can fly in the ocean, but it's not the safest place to learn as a beginner. So it's not going to be very feasible to bring a first-time person out there with 2 and 3 foot waves crashing over your face as you're going around the water. But it is an option. Beginner pilots, yes, most of the people we have in the harbor, they are beginners. But as Mike Hen acknowledged, you do have a lot of supervision. You've got a person on a jet ski supporting you. You've got an instructor who's talking to you through a walkie-talkie helmet, giving you advice. You've got an instructor who has remote throttle control to keep you out of harm's way. So it's not just a matter of pushing someone out. If you have a beginner paddleboarder who goes out, they don't really know what they're doing. Once they're out of eyesight, you have no idea what's really happening. So here you have at least some level of supervision. Noise, that's definitely been a concern for us. We've had some complaints from neighbors, from residents. That's part of the reason why we have gone mobile, to try and move around, to try and be as minimally invasive as we can be. But by comparison to the wedding boats that are out there, I feel like we're fairly reasonable in our volume levels. So maybe, as Gus pointed out, maybe the key is moving around the harbor so that we can kind of, if it passes by, it's not quite as disruptive as if it's here in front of your house the entire day. So we definitely understand that need, and we do want to work together with you on that. The wakes, we do try and minimize the wake. We are traveling at a low rate of speed. With the jets, they do push water down, but fortunately it doesn't create too much of a wake. But we do, as boats are coming through, we try and monitor the speed and the wakes as well. Someone mentioned damage. I'm not sure what damage has been done to boats in the harbor. We don't have anything reported from us. With the Christmas boat parade, we have flown in the parade before. We specifically did light up everything on the pack so that we would be visible. So just that's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else from the public like to speak? No, I'm sorry. All right, seeing no one else, I'm going to bring it back to the dais.
I'll make a motion that we propose a moratorium on any new such uses and send it to the Harbor Commission for discussion, and to come back to, have them come back to us with recommendations as to the future viability of this sort of activity in the harbor.
And does your motion have a timeline associated with it?
I think 6 months, 3 months.
The moratorium suggests a year, and I appreciate your raising that, because we certainly don't want to slow this down. If there are businesses that should be operating here, we want to make sure we resolve this as quickly as possible. If you just can take that as staff's word that we will pursue this diligently, it's noticed for a full year, but we'll try and do it quicker than that.
Well, I would like to suggest 6 months. I think
Okay.
this can be done quicker than that, and that puts us in a position for people for next summer who may want to operate a business to be able to know what the rules are.
All right, so that would be for 6 months.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that, and I support the idea that, I mean, I am sympathetic to the gentleman that has invested a lot of time in this already and now has to wait, so I'm hopeful that we can move forward promptly with it.
Please vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the title for urgency ordinance number 2014-11, an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach establishing a temporary prohibition on the issuance of marine activities permits to persons or businesses engaged in the operation of vessels propelled, by water above the surface of Newport Harbor. The motion carries 7-0.
We're going to move to item number 16 at this point in time. I'm going to ask our city clerk to share with the council how we are going to proceed. And then, as this is one agenda item, I'm then going to open it up for public comment for anyone that would like to make a public comment on this item, and then we will proceed with the item. Okay. So, city clerk, please tell us what we're going to do.
Appointments will be pursuant to Council Policy A2 for appointments to the boards and commissions, and they will take place in the following manner. The City Council will vote on all appointments simultaneously. The voting will be done by paper ballot, and the City Clerk will tabulate and announce the results, including the vote tally. And each member of the City Council will cast the appropriate number of votes for board or commissions on those paper ballots. And in order to be appointed, an applicant must receive at least 4 votes.
All right. With that, is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this agenda item? If so, now is the time to do it.
Thank you, Mayor Hill and members of the council. My name is Jim Mosier. I, of course, cannot anticipate what you might be doing with your votes tonight, but as a perennially unsuccessful candidate for some of these positions, I wanted to point out to you how frustrating the practice of reappointing incumbents can be to those members of the public, the many qualified applicants you get, who may want to participate more fully in public service by being appointed to one of these boards or commissions. Assuming the incumbents are reappointed tonight, as they usually are, of the 11 vacancies that you are filling, there's actually only 3 of them that are truly open. And looking at the clerk's roster of coming appointments, somebody who, for instance, wants to serve on the Library Board of Trustees is going to have to wait 4 years for tonight's reappointment to term out. That will be the first open position on the Library Board. Same thing on the Building and Fire Board of Appeal, and the same thing on our much respected Harbor Commission. It will be 4 years from now before somebody is actually terming out. And even on the Planning Commission, it's 3 years from now before there will be a single person who is not an incumbent running for the office. So just wanted to let you know what the effect of that is on the applicants, and I do think you get many qualified applicants. And second comment I wanted to make is a truly radical suggestion. Councilwoman Gardner kind of heard this in a different setting, and this is inconsistent with our city charter, but if we truly want our boards and commissions to be an unbiased cross-section of our public, we might consider at some point sending out summonses, like for jury duty, to be on the boards and commissions, and the first people who accepted the summons would be our new boards and committees on staggering terms for a year or so. And that would give us a true unbiased representation on every board and commission. Strange idea, inconsistent with our charter, but you might consider it. And then finally, although I am perennially unsuccessful, I would like to thank the mayor again this year for sending me a letter that even though I was not chosen, I'm still invited to attend the boards and commission meetings that I applied for. Thank you.
And do I recognize that if you just suggested that we do something against the charter? Oh, you're out of time, Jim. I'm sorry.
I'm suggesting a charter amendment if you want to do that.
Thank you for the explanation.
Put that with some other ones. We'll put it on.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Hello, Mayor.
council members. I just wanted to apologize for going out of turn.
No, you need to state your name again.
Oh, sorry, David
because
Quesada.
That's how we get a record of it.
Yep, David Quesada. I just wanted to apologize for going out of turn and speaking in the beginning. I didn't realize I'd get a chance to speak right now. Thank you very much. Please consider me again for the Harbor Commission. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I will acknowledge, maybe incorrectly, but I think correctly, that we have a dedicated process that we go through, and with that, we have an application period, of which there's a cutoff. From that application period, there is a screening committee that does a paper cut and or interview of applicants, and that then creates a nomination. And so we are at the end of nominations and beginning of voting at this point in the process. So I encourage you to participate in the next cycle, if you will. And these come up every quarter almost, because in addition to term out, we also have resignations and changes of position. You're only allowed to be on one committee at a time, and so people do move around and create vacancies as well.
I would just add to that you can fill out the application anytime, and it'll stay on file, and then you'll be notified anytime there is a vacancy for a commission that you're interested in. So it'd probably be a good idea to just go ahead and do it, and then you know you're going to be considered.
I'll start with the Board of Library Trustees first. Councilmember Henn votes for Jerry King. Councilmember Petros, Jerry King. Councilmember Gardner, Jerry King. Councilmember Daigle, Jerry King. Councilmember Curry, Jerry King. Mayor Pro Tem Selich, Jerry King. And Mayor Hill, Jerry King. Jerry King has been reappointed to the Board of Library Trustees. Now for Building and Fire Board of Appeals, there are 2 vacancies. Councilmember Henn votes for Jay Elbatar and Stephen Sandland. Councilmember Petros, Jay Elbatar, Stephen Sandland. Councilmember Gardner, Jay Elbatar, Stephen Sandland. Councilmember Daigle, Jay Elbatar, Stephen Sandland. Councilmember Curry, John DeFrenza, Stephen Sandland. Mayor Pro Tem Selich, John DeFrenza, Stephen Sandland. And Mayor Hill, Norma Hamadi Kuro, and Stephen Sandland. Jay Elbatar and Stephen Sandlin are appointed and reappointed to the Building and Fire Board of Appeals. City Arts Commission, there is 1 vacancy. Councilmember Henn votes for Judy Chang. Councilmember Petros, Judy Chang. Councilmember Gardner, Judy Chang. Councilmember Daigle, Judy Chang. Councilmember Curry, Judy Chang. Councilmember Selich, Judy Chang. Mayor Hill, Judy Chang. 7 votes for incumbent Judy Chang, so she is reappointed. For Civil Service Board, there is 1 vacancy. Councilmember Henn votes for Jeffrey Herdman. Councilmember Petros votes for Linda Beimfor. Councilmember Gardner, Jeffrey Herdman. Councilmember Daigle, Jeffrey Herdman. Councilmember Curry, Linda Beimfer. Mayor Pro Tem Selich, Jeffrey Herdman. And Mayor Hill, Linda Beimfer. With 4 votes, Jeffrey Herdman is appointed to the Civil Service Board. For Harbor Commission, there are 3 vacancies. Councilmember Henn, Thomas Dessel, Duncan McIntosh, and Douglas West. Councilmember Petros, William Kenny, Duncan McIntosh, and Douglas West. Councilmember Gardner, Patricia Humphreys, Duncan McIntosh, and Douglas West. Councilmember Daigle, William Kenny, Duncan McIntosh, and Douglas West. Councilmember Curry, Thomas Dessel, Duncan McIntosh, and Douglas West. Mayor Pro Tem Selich, William Kenny, Duncan McIntosh, and Douglas West. And Mayor Hill, William Kenny, Duncan McIntosh, and Douglas West. So with William Kenny getting 4 votes, he is appointed, and Duncan McIntosh and Douglas West are reappointed. So for Parks, Beaches, and Recreation, there are 2 vacancies. Councilmember Henn votes for Thomas Anderson and Ron Cole. Councilmember Petros, Thomas Anderson and Ron Cole. Councilmember Gardner, Thomas Anderson, Ron Cole. Councilmember Daigle, Thomas Anderson, Ron Cole. Councilmember Curry, William Hosfield, and Eric Wigan. Mayor Pro Tem Selich, Thomas Anderson and Ron Cole. And Mayor Hill, Thomas Anderson and Ron Cole. Thomas Anderson and Ron Cole are reappointed. And for Planning Commission, there is 1 vacancy. Councilmember Henn, Peter Coding. Councilmember Petros, Peter Coding. Councilmember Gardner, Peter Coding. Councilmember Daigle, Freda Mary. Councilmember Curry, Freda Mary. Mayor Pro Tem Selich, Peter Coding. And Mayor Hill, Freda Mary. Peter Coding is appointed to the Planning Commission.
And that's it.
That's it.
And letters to inform all applicants of the status.
All right. Thank you for that. I would just like to make a comment as being part of the nominating committee, along with Councilman Selich and Councilwoman Gardner. The pool of applicants is getting stronger and stronger, I think, each time we go through the cycle. And it's getting tougher and tougher to make the decisions. So that's the good news.
And I think a lot of times it becomes a matter of looking at the whole committee or council, commission, and saying not so much in terms of, well, this person has whatever, but where are our gaps? What particular skill set can we use this time around that we may not have had? And so you get sometimes that also is a very big decision as opposed to just somebody you might know.
And as you maybe hear many of us say, if you didn't make it this time, keep the application current and keep applying. All right. With that, motion for reconsideration.
A motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the City Council at either this meeting or the previous meeting may be made only by one of the council members who voted with the prevailing side.
Are there any motions for reconsideration? Seeing none, we stand adjourned.